Apostate Aladdin going against Apostate Prophet. Confusing. Why are they both apostates? Anyway, who am I to not follow YouTube trends? AP is my friend and he wanted me to react, so let's do it. Is this the Apostate Prophet is wrong about Israel and Palestine? It's 2 hours. I'm gonna die. Wait, is there another one? Oh yeah. Okay, great. I think Israel should be much harsher. Their dark side of anti-Islam YouTube. Okay, that's the video. Shorter.
This video includes topics with upsetting and potentially disturbing themes. While I do my best to choose my words carefully, viewer discretion is advised.
Before I really comment on the video, I want to say that from the 15 minutes that I've seen that a friendly ex-Muslim did, my first thought is like, is Apostate Aladdin Arab? Because his way of thinking really reminds me of the Arab way of thinking until pretty recently. They wouldn't want to talk about the issues inside the Arab society, and there were many, because of that mentality, the mentality of this is between us, this is in our community, this mentality of not doing dirty laundry outside. Okay, first complaint is how sarcastic AP is about Islam and that he exudes an aura of superiority and disgust.
When I thought of AP, I imagined him with a condescending and mocking smirk on his face.
I understand he's very sarcastic and it might come out very different for those who have fond memories of celebrating the Ramadan with their family and making food together and sitting around the table with their extended family and just giving out candy. There is so much around Islam that is not necessarily Islamic, but it's a tradition. So having meals, celebrations, having your family, eating in a certain way, sitting in a certain way, it all can bring warmth and happy memories for those who don't associate Islam with tragedies in their personal lives.
After binge watching a bunch of his videos, I noticed the emotional toll it took on me and I decided to take a break. I still felt cheated and duped by Muslims and Islam, but that feeling started to subside gradually with time.
Islam was very permanent in AP's life in a way that harmed him. Lost his aunt, had to move it to a different country, was not allowed to have fun, had lived under very restrictive Islamic house, lost connection with his family at some point because he grew out of Islam. He really lost so much because of Islam and because the values of Islam that he doesn't have anything warm to say about Islam. Many of his problems that he had in life were enabled, celebrated, and occurred because of Islamic thought.
He mentioned that he used to be very religious, yet he didn't speak like someone who understood what that was like. He spoke like someone who transcended that state of blind religiosity and now resented those who couldn't do the same thing he did. He acted like it's so unfathomable that people would believe in silly or harmful or hateful things, despite having been there himself.
He spoke like someone who wasn't religious. I think here there is another aspect of Islam that is prayer and things that are a little bit more meditative. I remember the first time I've seen the Surah Al-Fatiha and the Islamic prayers. I just thought, oh, those sound exactly like how Hebrew prayers sound. I almost thought that they just translated it. And then for somebody who is a devout Muslim like AP was, he's a very spiritual person. I've met him. His spirituality exudes from him. And I think it comes out as a double betrayal when he had that faith and had that meditation and had that connection to prayer to realize that it's false.
Like many ex-Muslims, I had felt a shock from realizing the extent of Islam's darker side, and I didn't want to transfer that emotion onto him. don't shoot the messenger.
I understand why AP's way of presenting Islam would speak more to a non-Muslim crowd than to a Muslim crowd. It does bring the stories and the philosophical parts of Islam forward. It will hurt those who have fond memories and connection to the ritualistic part of Islam. But I also think it's important to know what stories are told in Islam, because stories have a huge effect on the way we think, knowingly or unknowingly. And I can say that as a Jew, I know that we have to know what are the stories of Islam and not get fooled by those elements that seem similar to Judaism that we love and respect, because what makes Judaism different and Jews so psychologically different than Muslims is what stories do we hear in the synagogue, and also what stories do we tell ourselves.
Newsflash, as far as we know, all prophets are false prophets. At least that's what an atheist like AP believes. Or laughing about how Muhammad rode a flying horse to heaven, while David and his followers believe Jesus ascended on a cloud. You'd think AP would say something about it.
Stories have power and meaning that I didn't understand. This is part of like when I talked about in Judaism, we have the Naseh v'Nishma. So God went to all the nations and told them, hey, follow my rules. And they said, sure, what are the rules? And then we'll follow them. The Jews said, yes, Naseh v'Nishma, we'll follow the rules, and then we will understand what the rules are. By actively practicing, then we might learn and understand what's the meaning behind the rules. Remembering that we left Egypt and that we were slaves, it's a to-do commandment. So you have to tell that story. And then only when you're older do you really understand what that story does to you psychologically. And some people would never understand. This is why the do part is so important. We left Egypt, and we have to remember we were slaves, and that means we understand that it was us yesterday, and it might be us again tomorrow, and therefore there is inequality in front of the law. The understanding part, and this is something that a lot of religious Jews don't like about secular Jews, that they don't understand why they're telling those stories. But nonetheless, those stories shape us, shape our thinking, and shape who we are.
And I always maintain that we are two different people, and I don't have to answer for anything he says or does.
So there is a part here when he talks about how people keep comparing between them. I don't care.
AP's channel had already received a significant following of non-Muslims, which is not in itself a bad thing. It is important for people to hear about the unappealing parts of Islam and life under Islam, which often go underreported by Muslims. The problem was the climate created by his channel's audience. It fits so perfectly into the supposedly false narrative we were indoctrinated with, that anyone who criticizes Islam does it out of hatred, and they're probably rooting for a rival religion as well. It's one thing to raise awareness for the struggles of ex-Muslims and Muslims and anyone else harmed by the religion. It's another thing to pander to an audience's fear and make them feel personally persecuted, even if they aren't.
As an anonymous person that spoke ill of Islam online, where are you on the list of the Islamic execution exactly? My guess is that there are a lot of people before you, and then it's super easy for you to actually get out of the list when you go, you know what, I was completely wrong.
The people that David Wood and Apostate Prophet fearmonger to about the dangers of Islam creeping into their lives, most of them have never truly faced any of it, and likely never will. And whatever valid criticism and warning these two have about Islam, it gets buried under their hypocrisy and hate, appealing mostly to those not in the know. Instead of using his platform to improve the lives of those who suffer under religion, he uses it to empower an audience of non-Muslims to behave as if they're part of an imminent holy war, and as if they know better than those who experience the religion themselves.
Sweetheart, please tell me more about how Hindus and Christians are not being persecuted in Islam, how there is no threat to their lives from Islam. I want to hear that. I want to hear it because the little girl in me would really want to understand how the Allahu Akbar that I heard outside of my house when somebody decided to blow themselves up, it doesn't risk me Tell me more.
Meanwhile, it's Christianity that poses the most danger to Americans' rights and freedoms, not Islam.
Nobody is threatened by Muslims or Islam when it's a small minority. When it becomes a little bit more than a small minority, suddenly you have all the kinds of phenomena. First of all, the first people who get to experience Islam are women like me that are called whores because they wear tank tops. And then, or that because Islam looks at a woman that is not wearing a hijab like something that you can grab, you know. Jews, when they see a woman that is inappropriately dressed, what do? They do this. They close their own eyes. What does a Muslim person do? I'll tell you what they do. They look at you like you're a piece of meat. And for them in their minds, because this is what Islam teaches, you're something that they can just grab and take.
Daka, how did you feel about the 7th of October when you were in Eilat, I think, at the time?
Yes.
What was your, as basically a de facto Israeli, how did you feel as a woman here in Israel?
I think the first thing that came about is basically our social media was basically bombarded with videos and pictures and images of what was happening at the time it was happening. And I was sitting there with my friends and the first thing that kind of like the feeling was very, very familiar to me. It was something that I like, it was almost like I recognized what was about to happen. I recognized what was going to happen because it's stuff that has happened to us before, stuff that the humiliation that has happened to us in Egypt. Growing up in Egypt, it's not easy. The racism that you face every single day, it's in a violent nature. And as a kid, you remember when everything went on, and I see those videos and the sorrow that I felt was very familiar. It wasn't just feeling sympathy, but it was from a place of recognition. It was from a place of knowing what actually happened to them and knowing what's going to happen. And the cases of rape and the cases of everything that has happened, it was very, very sad. It was very, very sad. That day, I think all of my friends and I we're all South Sudanese, but we all just spent the entire day sitting at home and going crazy watching videos and stories, and we couldn't believe that this was happening here in Israel.
This is exactly the kind of culture and the kind of attitude Islam has towards women. And you cannot hide it. It's so obvious, it's so out there, it's so clear how restricted women are wherever Islam is, and that women, if there is a good percentage of Muslims in your community, women cannot go out in the street because they are getting threats. I know how it goes. Every person who doesn't follow the mainstream modesty code, unless she comes from a family, listen close now, unless she comes from a family that you know you'd get fucked so hard if you touch her, it's like public property. Don't tell me it's not like that. Don't lie. Okay, so how do we Israelis live so close by with so many Muslims? Women here can walk around all the time, anytime. Well, let's open a book, this book. What do Jews, one of the first lessons that you get here in this book, is when Dinah is inappropriately treated by the ruler of Shechem. What do her brothers do? Exactly. The message is very clear. So they know whatever they think, about women and things like that, and they do think it, and they do sometimes dare to open their mouth. They're afraid. They're afraid to do anything to women here. This is why we can be safe outside, because they are terrified of doing anything. Terrified.
Integrity and credibility AP had started to seem less and less evident. To sit in the company of a theist and mock another religion's far-fetched beliefs is truly a sight to behold.
You cannot compare a religion that has the decency to say that you need to love your fellows, your friends, your family, your neighbors, your people, to a religion that would find any excuse to execute you. I don't know, I just don't think it's relevant here.
I don't know if this was a pathetic attempt at humor or if his countless hours around David have acclimated him to his cold-blooded psychopathy, but it's disturbing to say the least.
David Wood might not have empathy, but is a 100 times better person than many of us, because he chooses every day to do the right thing and to be a good person, where for most of us it's, with empathy, it comes a little bit more naturally, or so we think. And let's be honest, many times we're still assholes. David Wood puts the work in to be a good person, and I saw it in real life. He doesn't deserve criticism. He deserves applause and admiration. That's what he deserves. I'm gonna stop here.
Can you imagine saying this to the relative of a dead Palestinian or even a dead Israeli?
If you shoot somebody in the head, it kills them, for example, because the bullet goes in there and it drills.
There is a really nice story in the Talmud where I want to make a video on it, but I'm going to bring the message. There is something that turns people really unpleasant when they refuse to engage with the unpleasant parts of the world. It makes them feel like they're above it all. Like, since they don't talk about death, or they always condemn bombing and always condemn, or not even always, maybe it's, one group is more condemning than the other. I don't know. I didn't check how much he condemned the Hamas attack on Israelis. Doesn't matter. He might have said nothing about it. And even that makes him feel superior, because he doesn't engage in that dirty, mortal, unclean things that are part of humanity. It doesn't make you a better person. In fact, it makes you a worse person when you're refusing to face ugliness. You're refusing to engage in that things that are not as pretty. And it makes you think that you are better and above it all. You're not. You're not. And if you are, well, I feel sorry for whoever is in your responsibility, for your children or future children. What would happen if you'd have to dirty your hands to protect them? Would it be above you all? It will be like, you know what, I'll sacrifice my child as long as my hands are clean.
Can you imagine saying this to the relative of a dead Palestinian or even a dead Israeli?
Dude, you don't know anything about Israelis. If you want to come and meet a society with like really dark humor, that would be here. Listen, our grandparents died in many different evil ways. Well, probably not our grandparents since we're alive, but their siblings, and even not, my sisters, they lost so many of their friends. Do you think we get offended if somebody says something like that? No, because it's reality, it's life.
You can really start to see it come to light after October 7th, when Hamas attacked unsuspecting Israelis, took hostages, and murdered over 1,000 people. Ever since, Israel launched multiple attacks on Gaza, murdering tens of thousands and injuring multiples more, with a lot of Palestinians now starving to death and unable to access humanitarian aid. Ever since October 7th, AP has not stopped unconditionally supporting and praising Israel's every move. He says the most dehumanizing things about Palestinians, while presenting himself as a fair and nuanced crusader of the truth.
I see you feel so much empathy towards Gazans. Well, they're not starving. Every person, every child that they have photos of him dying of starvation. Why everybody around him are so fat? Those kids are not starved because Israel. They are starved because they are getting starved on purpose by people around them. That's why they are starving. On the 7th of October, Israel did not enter right away. It gave the Gazans a chance to go out and shout, that was idiotic, that was wrong. We're gonna get, how Israelis, the reason why Jewish women can walk in the street safely and German women cannot is exactly how we react to those things, because we understand the Middle East, we understand the language, so you'd stay alive and unassaulted. They had a chance. They knew exactly what was coming. They knew. And did they have the courage to go against Hamas and say that was a mistake? Killing 1,200 Israelis in the most brutal, awful way, in a way that would remind them their greatest atrocities in history. The methods they used, check the Holocaust, but not ours, the Armenian Holocaust. Same methods, the same methods that they did on October 7th. Those bare hands, you know, in the end of the day, the most deadly weapon people have, those that brought the biggest ratio of killing, is not anything fancy. Did you see that video with the black girl and the white girl? You'd be surprised how much you can do with these. But whatever. They had a chance to pick up a stone, to pick up a stick, and go and protest. What's gonna come is not worth it. Did they do it? No. Are they doing it now? No. Million people, one place, Rafah, all together, living as in refugee camps. Why can't all those people get up all together and go show Hamas what they think about what they brought on the Gazans? You know, because in the end of the day, what is the biggest claim against the Israelis is that you know who your neighbors are. How come you let them in? The moment you open a little bit of a gap, they're gonna do looting, they're gonna do mutilations, they're gonna, you know, do things to women and children and men. The worst things that you can do to a human, they would do. It's very obvious. It's very obvious that this is their mentality. Was someone surprised? No, everybody were like, well, how come you let them in? Like people actually walking, you know, not even Hamas members. They didn't have weapons. They didn't have anything. They just brought stick and stones and started doing horrible things and celebrating it. Let's reverse the question. If we know what happens, if Israel is so irresponsible that it didn't watch the border with this technology on a good enough level for one day, and that's what happens, they planned it and everything. You know what was the Israeli problem? That they thought that they would be too scared of the following consequences to do that no sane person would do that. But of course the Gazans, I'm sorry, they're not sane, they're insane. What's insanity? To do the same thing time and time again and again and expecting different results. So what do we know about the Israelis and what do we know about the Arabs? Exactly. We know that the Arabs, when given an opportunity, will, with their hands, bare hands, do the most horrible things that a person can do to a person. And what would the Israelis do? What does the Bible teach about touching a woman, our sisters? What does it say? Yes, the Israeli response would always be devastating. So who is to blame here? Who is responsible to the protection of their side, of their people? The Israelis are to blame because we live next to this very interesting type of humans, and we got what we got, because what can you expect from them, really? And then they live next to a certain type of humans too. What did you think would happen? This is why there is no mercy. You think Hamas, if Israelis didn't stop them, you know, the ratios, we fight like men. There was one Israeli on 10, sometimes 100 Hamas with weapons, okay? The ratios were insane. The stories there, you cannot believe it, okay? 10 of Hamas people on several, like 1-2 police people, and who wins? Our side, with great casualties, yes. But this is how much we put in effort, we put into training. Think about it, like number-wise, we don't have that much more people. They have a whole tunnel network underneath of Gaza. Every house that was entered had an arsenal of weapons. You don't get the insanity of it. What they don't have is the jet ships. That's what they don't have. But soldiers now go street, house to house, street to street, physically, and they engage on one-on-one, 1-on-10, one-on-everything fights and win. Why do I need to have mercy? Nobody in the world, all the people who are now, oh no, poor Palestinians, were they like, Hamas, stop, what are you doing? No, what are you doing? Stop, this is awful. Hamas needs to be judged right now. No, they were justifying it. So us as Israelis, when we see the whole world, and the whole world is complicit in it, you know, because we see, okay, if the whole Arab world is now supporting what Hamas did and want to condemn them, then we cannot even have the slightest chance of them surviving. Because what it would do is that it would turn not these millions that are like around us that are the same number as us. No, it's going to be billions on us. No, thank you. We have to devastate them. It's the only way we can survive. How can you cry for the Palestinians who didn't take responsibility for their action? Not for 1 second.
He laughs at an Israeli for being too empathetic, and they proceed to educate her on how it's really all about Islam and how Israel can do no wrong. Instead of using that opportunity to learn more about what's happening over there or ask her the specifics of what she thinks.
What many Israelis don't understand is that it's not that the Arabs hate them for necessarily national reasons. They're gonna hunt us down around the world, even if we disperse, even if we don't, because Jews are successful. It doesn't matter if they're in England, United States. Jews are threatened in each one of those countries. You see, when they met the West, they realized that they are so behind everyone else. The resentment that they started developing was so high, they started revisiting their writings, where it clearly says who should be blamed for it. So there is this story about the Jews who worried about their leader Moses while he was on the mountain, and they didn't have the patience that was needed to get the commandments that would tell them what to do. So they built this cow and started praying to it. And God didn't like it because that's idolatry and that's not good. Why is it not good? Because God said so. Anyway, this story sucks. This story actually describes how Moses tried to protect his people and begged God to punish him with them. Who would do that? Muhammad fixed it. This is not a leader's job. You see, you want to conquer the world and have the world because you're the best in the world. You don't need to protect anyone. Moses did a great mistake doing that. So the version in the Quran is way better. Of course, Islam and Muhammad never takes responsibility for anything. And their stories are full of people not taking responsibility for anything. Even though for years they didn't even know what their writings were saying. When they saw how far behind they are with their culture, with their lack of achievements, they had to go back to Islam. This is what really happened in the 70s, all right? And they saw, wait, it's their fault. Muhammad says it. The Christians are living a great life because they took everything from us. The Jews are so successful because they take everything from us, because they're devils and they have superpowers, whatever. And then the Quran makes sense again. It has nothing to do with Israel. It has everything to do with Islam. And Israelis not necessarily know that the end day of Islam is going to be slaughtering all the Jews. Even if only 10% of Muslims believe that. That's such a big percentage for a very small minority that is the Jews, that it's a real threat. And Israelis have to understand it, that whether they pack their things and go, whether they stay here, it doesn't matter. The Jews that left Arab countries, that are a good percentage of the population here, they know exactly how it was living with Muslims, how it was living with people that would take your babies away, that would hang your community leaders from time to time, and then also, butcher you all the time. And what's nice is that unlike Europeans that like keeping records, they wouldn't even keep records of it and then deny it, just like they deny the Armenian genocide, like they deny anything. AP and David Wood need to explain it to Israelis that, listen, it doesn't matter what you're gonna do. This country, they want it annihilated. And even if it's annihilated, they want to burn you, all of you, each and one of you, Every Jew, no matter if you hide behind trees or behind stones or nothing, each and one of you.
Apostate Prophet is the de facto representative of a lot of ex-Muslims in the English-speaking world. That comes with a responsibility that I don't think he recognizes or respects. At first, it was annoying and embarrassing to have him as our unofficial spokesperson, but now it's downright dangerous. He perpetuates negative stereotypes about how blindly anti-Muslim and hateful apostates are, because evidently he is. I urge AP, even when he disagrees, to treat individuals with dignity and humanity, the same dignity and humanity he wished he were treated with when he was a Muslim or when he first left Islam.
I think the fact that Apostate Prophet represent the ex-Muslims to the Western world is actually, believe it or not, more than ex-Muslims deserve. Because obviously, I'm sorry to say, a lot of you do understand that there is a lot of toxicity in Islam. But you only move from being participators to enablers, which is, better, not amazing. Versus AP, who calls out the bullshit, who shows his face, who fights, who is not a coward. Maybe should not represent the ex-Muslim community because he gives the false notion, the false hope that something good can come out of this culture.
He is alienating so many of us and wasting his incredible potential in the process. He has caused irreparable harm to the ex-Muslim movement in the English-speaking world. We are already demonized by many Muslims and will continue to be for a very long time, but what he does isn't helping fight that. I use the label apostate to take back its ownership because apostate or murtad are often used against us as insults. Whatever work I do to take back that label, I have to first undo all the harm that he's done to tarnish it. And that's really unfortunate because he started off by helping so many people, so it's sad to see him fall from grace like that.
It's especially appropriate when a guy in a mask is the one that is criticizing Islam. You guys are... The majority of you are cowards. You're not gonna go and publicly criticize Islam. The majority of Muslims are silent against extreme Islam or Islam in general, and they protect it. They protect it at the cost of everyone else. This is a huge problem with Muslim culture, a huge one. The Taliban, they can rule now in Afghanistan because the Afghans are cowards. The Iraqis are cowards. The Lebanese are cowards. They are all cowards unless they're motivated by extremism and the zealotry of Islam. They are cowards. It's a culture of cowards.
There's more complexity to humans than what they say they believe. When it comes to online content, hate and controversy and divisiveness are always more appealing to the algorithm and to the masses. There's no sensationalism or profit in empathy and nuance. Even if someone doesn't start off as hateful, I can see how their social media feed would turn them that way.
I might have agreed on that part, but he proved how dangerous his thinking is during the whole video. So, no, I'm sorry. I would have agreed with you, if it was just about, there are things in Islam, like the Ramadan meals that I remember so fondly with my family, and please don't take it away from us. But the truth is, you're not high enough on the list to get the worst part of Islam. So it's comfortable. It's comfortable to be on the fence.
I know I'll be asked in the comments, you seem to have so much to say. Why did you make this video instead of talking to AP about it directly?
Well, after watching the whole stupid video, not stupid at all, very relevant, everything that he said, I think what really bothers him is that he differs on his views when it comes to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, which I understand. But why pretend that it's about anything else? I don't think it's about anything else. Like, comment, subscribe, share, and talk while you can. See ya.